it's one of those big dreams that I have to kind of watch all of the Simpsons episodes, but it's never going to happen.
Dream big. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses nerddom through various segments. My name is Tyler Hunt, alongside my co-host as always, Patty Coon. How's it going, Pat?
It's going pretty well. We're actually, my wife and I are going to do something that I never thought I was going to ever participate in my life. We're actually...
Anal?
Well, no. I've done that plenty of times.
Glad we could start this podcast off classy.
Always. We're actually going to take our dogs to get pictures with Santa, which...
What the fuck?
I know. It's like when I think of getting a new tattoo. Like, I think it sounds like a really good idea until I get there and it's painful and then it peels and it's all gross. But I think the final project, like the final tattoo is awesome, but like I think it's going to be painful while we're there. But the pictures will be fun afterwards.
I'm curious where, like, in your brain, like, you're thinking this is a good idea going into it. Like, I guess, is it like a Christmas card thing?
Yeah. And I mean, for our married listeners out there, my wife is super, super excited about it. And it's usually just kind of good to give them something every once in a while.
Maybe Brittany just didn't see that this was happening, but she would try to go weird with it. She'd like try to take the cats and shit. And that's weird. Yeah. That's weirder than the dog.
You're 10 cats. I think they would charge you more than $25.
We got 3 cats, but yeah, might as well be 10.
Yeah. It's, yeah, I'm surprised she didn't go for it. It seemed like something weird that she would want to do.
Oh, anything weird animal related, she would want to participate in. So, and
I think Ivy would do pretty well. Your dog, Ivy.
Yeah, I think she'd do well.
She's super chill.
Yeah, she gets crazy when she first meets somebody, but she'll like 5 seconds in, she'll just go lay down. So she's pretty good, and I think she would do it. But that being said, we are not doing it.
Yeah,
and Brittany will not know this is going on, and yeah.
My dogs are not going to do well. Like, I mean, it's going to be a disaster.
I think your dog Rambo will. Caesar's a little crazy.
I think the opposite. Because
really?
I think Caesar's so afraid of everybody, like new people. He'll just cower, and so he'll just be like shaking the whole time. Rambo's like super, super aggressive.
I wonder if this Santa that's doing this gets paid more for this bullshit than like having a kid sit on his lap.
I think probably less. I would think less.
What do you think is more likely? A dog pees on him or a child pees on him?
Child, for sure.
It's actually like the famous Santa that went viral last year too, isn't it? That's doing these.
I was not aware that.
Yeah, at our local mall, this Santa had this baby on his lap and it fell asleep, and he like went into a pose where he was asleep as well. So the baby was asleep on a sleeping Santa, and I don't know, it went viral. It was all over the internet, and it happened in Evansville, which is where we're from, and I think that's the Santa they got for this. So it's a pretty big get.
Okay, cool.
So you're going to be in internet famous territory here this afternoon.
Yeah, something bad's going to happen for sure. All right, so we start off each episode by kind of checking in with each other. We call it What We're Into. So Tyler, what are you into this week?
So I watched a movie this week that came out this year on the recommendation from my, I guess, stepbrother-in-law is what he would be, who is apparently a listener of the podcast. So I'm going to give him a quick shout out. Eric Minsterman. Thank you for the recommendation on this movie. It was definitely on my watch list before he mentioned something, but his recommendation definitely sent me over the edge on wanting to watch it. And that movie is Hunt for the Wilderpeople.
Okay. I've never heard of that.
You've never heard of it? Oh, really? So it's a movie by, I'm going to butcher his name, but he's going to be a household name soon. Taika Waititi?
Oh,
the
yeah.
guy who did What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
So this was a movie he did earlier. Obviously, he is also directing the new Thor movie, so I'm sure after that movie comes out, he's going to be highly sought after. But he's a great storyteller. Basically, the synopsis of this movie, I'm not as good at pat with synopsises, so I'm just going to read off IMDb. It's a national manhunt is ordered for a rebellious kid and his foster uncle who go missing in the wild New Zealand bush. So, pretty simple synopsis there, and there's definitely a lot more that goes into the plot than that, but that's the gist of where we get in the story, about not halfway, a third into the movie. But What We Do in the Shadows, we've talked about it multiple times on the podcast. The more I watch that movie, the more it becomes one of my favorite movies. I would say if we were to do a top 10 again, it would probably squeak its way in at number 10.
I like that movie a lot, but
I really like it. I think that it's really clever, and I love the dry humor in it. This movie is also fantastic. I looked at Rotten Tomatoes for it before I watched it, and it has like a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's very, very well deserved. This is a great movie. It's incredibly charming. It's not just funny like What We Do in the Shadows was. This movie has a heart as well. There's a deeper meaning there that kind of concerning human interaction and the need for us to have other people in our lives and have those strong relationships. One of the things I love about What We Do in the Shadows is the tone, and that carries over to this movie as well. There's a very steady tone throughout it, and I think that is, I mean, it's both during the humorous moments and the sentimental moments of this movie, and I think that that's a testament to Taika Waititi's filmmaking.
I think you're nailing it, man. I've actually heard it pronounced a couple of times, and I mean, that's pretty close.
I'm hoping I am, but I think that that's definitely a testament to his talent. Like, he's able to keep a very particular tone throughout this movie that's very enjoyable, and it sticks through each scene and no matter what the context of that scene is, whether, like I said, it's humorous or sentimental. I think that this movie might be my favorite ever Sam Neill performance, which isn't saying a ton. I mean, like, he's not done a ton of stuff.
You didn't see all of the Omen sequels?
I didn't know he was in all the Omen sequels.
I don't know if he's in all of them. I know he's in one of them.
Of course, like, his big role to me is Jurassic Park. And,
sure.
I mean, he's iconic in that movie, but he plays a guy from New Zealand in this movie, who's very rough around the edges, and he nails it. He's great. And he also has fantastic chemistry with the kid in this movie, whose name is Gillian Dennison. Whenever I saw the poster for this movie, I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna, like, relate to this kid. Like,
yeah.
It's a fat kid who wears, like, hip hop hats, and he's Caucasian, but he's very into hip hop culture and being a thug, as he calls it, and a gangster. And I didn't think that would really resonate with me, because that's kind of the opposite of what I am. But he's fantastic. He's really great, and you do end up rooting for him, and you want him to find a family. Like I mentioned, he refers to Sam Neill's character as his foster uncle. He is an orphan, and he's kind of been shuffled around group homes. So you kind of start to feel for the kid and feel for the situation they're in. I'm not going to get too much more into the story, because there are little twists and turns towards the beginning of the movie that kind of put the characters where they end up for most of the movie, which is the New Zealand bush. But it is fantastic. I really think that as this movie gets out there, it's going to gain a lot of popularity as more and more people see it. It's definitely in my top 10 for this year as of right now, and I couldn't recommend it more. It's a great movie.
Like I said, I've not really heard anything about this movie, but I will agree with one thing you said. You are definitely not a gangster.
That is definitely true. Okay, man. What are you into?
All right. So what I'm into, I'm going to talk about a new mobile game from Peter, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, Peter Molyneux.
Okay.
Which I don't know if you're familiar with his work.
I am not.
He is the kind of the creative mind behind the Fable franchise, which is games that I've really, really enjoyed. I kind of grew up with them. I think the first one came out when I was a sophomore or junior in high school, and I've kind of played all of them up until Fable Legends, which I never got to play. But other than that, I really liked the franchise a lot. He's kind of infamous in the gaming world for coming up with ideas and kind of boasting about his ideas and his new games. He kind of reminds me of Guillermo del Toro. Like, every time he does an interview, he kind of talks in like these really grand expectations for things, and either projects never come to be, or they're not quite what he originally said, and I think he's actually more infamous for this because a lot of his games that he does develop end up coming out, and they're not quite as grand as he kind of set out for them to be. And I remember people, when Fable first came out, people were like pissed at him because he came out and it was like this game was going to be total open world. You could basically do whatever you wanted to. And as the game went on, as they developed it, they obviously kind of had to put constraints on that. And I know a lot of people that had been following the whole process were very disappointed in that fact. But I honestly, it was when I was first getting into, like, really getting into gaming. I've been a gamer since my entire life, but, you know, just like any movie buff, like, there's a certain point where you get to where you start remembering, okay, that guy wrote this movie, he also wrote that movie, and directors and stuff like that. So you get to a certain point where you just get really hardcore into it, and that's kind of the point where I was starting to get into gaming. So I didn't know anybody's name that developed games and stuff like that. So this was kind of the first, my first moment where I can remember that I really got into gaming a lot. And so I wasn't disappointed with Fable at all because I didn't know that he wanted to make this huge game, and he kind of had to rein it in a little bit. I was just blown away by how open world it was, even though I didn't know that it was supposed to be even more so. And like I said, I really liked the game. The trail is, I don't know if I mentioned the name of the game that I'm actually going to talk about. I thought that was a nice build-up. It's called The Trail. It's actually like this third-person game where you explore the countryside, similar to Fable, but I mean it's much more because it's a mobile game. They really constrain you as far as the gameplay is concerned, and you're just kind of following this trail to this particular town. And once you're to the town, which from what I understand, I haven't gotten to the town yet, but once you get to that town, you kind of start buying, like, kind of building your empire. I don't know if it's necessarily, it switches from a third person to like almost like a real-time strategy game. I don't know if it's like that jarring of a switch. I think it's still kind of like in Fable, more like the later Fables where you would still in third person mode, but you could buy up shops and rent out places and stuff like that. So I think it's going to end up being more similar to that than kind of like a real-time strategy game. But I'm really liking this game so far. I've talked on past episodes of kind of like my expectations for mobile games. Cause I mean, obviously we're big gamers. We play on Xbox and Wii and stuff like that. So I want those games to be super expansive and being able to do a ton of stuff and be kind of complicated. But with mobile games, I want them to be as simple as possible because normally the way I play them is I play them at work or just kind of. Last night I was in line to wait for Doctor Strange, so I was playing this game while we were waiting. Yeah. And so that's kind of how I use mobile games. So I want it to be as easy as possible to play on my phone. And this game kind of nails it because the gameplay, it's super simple. But like I said, there's a lot to do in this game, very similar to the Fable games where you had a lot. Like, those games are kind of the perfect example for me of like the RPGs where I will go for hours without actually playing the main quest because there's so much to do. And this game is somewhat similar to that. You can like craft stuff, you can trade with people, but in order to play the game, you kind of have to continue with the story. So it's a little bit different. Like, you can't just get lost in side quests because you have to continue along the trail in order to do basically anything. So I do like how there's a lot to do, but it's also super simple as far as the gameplay is concerned. Like I said, I haven't gotten to the town yet, so I don't know like how it switches, if it switches, but I'm really digging this game so far.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said, spot on about like my opinion on mobile gaming. Like, it's definitely got to be simple, and it's got to be something I can pick up for a few minutes and then put down, because it's usually something I do while I'm waiting on something, or like on a break at work or whatever what you were saying. So, I definitely agree with that. I don't know that I'll check this out. I'm not huge into mobile gaming. I think that I want my mobile games to probably be even simpler than you want yours to be. Like, I want to, like, in my dream world, I'm going to be able to pick up a Mario game on my phone and play a little bit and put it down. Yeah. And, I mean, Super Mario Run is coming out eventually, and I think that'd be the game I'm looking for. But it sounds like this may be even still too involved for me as something to play on my phone or my iPad, so I'll probably pass on it.
All right, so our next segment is called Comics. Tal and I read a lot of comic books each week, and we'd like to spotlight one or two. So what'd you read this week?
So this was actually a comic that I wasn't planning on getting this week. I went to the comic shop on, I think, Thursday, and was just perusing like I usually do, and came across something that piqued my interest a little bit and ended up picking it up. And that is Catwoman Election Night #1.
Yeah, I'd heard about this, but I have no interest.
That's good because it's god-awful. So,
really?
This book is not subtle at all.
Okay.
It is basically about, it flashes back to Catwoman's upbringing in an orphanage and introduces a female character, and comes back to the present, and that female character is running for mayor of Gotham against the Penguin, who's also running for mayor of Gotham, which is a nice call to Batman Returns. But basically, Catwoman's trying to get to the bottom of things. And when I said this book is not subtle, I mean that it is very explicitly playing off of the presidential race going on right now.
Sure.
So this is released Monday, the day before Election Day. It could have been like a cool satire, but they just force it down your throat. So the Penguin is obviously Donald Trump in this book. He says things like, make Gotham great again. He talks about building a fucking wall around Gotham, like not subtle at all. And then the female character has her own criminal issues going on, very similar to Hillary Clinton. And I don't know about you, but this time of year, I've gotten really depressed with all the political stuff. I'm not going to get into my political views on our podcast, but I've lost a lot of respect for people through this election process. And
sure.
I'm really, really tired of seeing stuff, especially through Facebook. So whenever I go to my comic books, I don't want to be reminded of what's going on in the real world.
Sure.
If I read a Catwoman book, I want to read about Catwoman and what a badass character she is. And, Batman pops up in this book, and I want to learn more about their relationship. I don't really want to be reminded of the depressing things going on right now in the world. So that was really, really disappointing. Catwoman has been a character that has had a lot of clever storylines in the past, and she's a protagonist and an antagonist, and it's fun to flip back and forth between those. But this book is just not one of those clever storylines. It forces the comparison to the presidential election down your throat. And on top of all that, it was $4.99, which is ridiculously high priced for a book of this caliber. So definitely skip it unless you like really love the election stuff going on right now and want to see it in Gotham. But unfortunately, it did not hit for me, obviously.
Not that I necessarily disagree with you, but it is called Catwoman Election.
Yeah, and it came out the week before the election, so I kind of figured there might be something along those lines in it. And I think that maybe if they were a little bit more subtle and it was more of a satire, it could have possibly worked. But the way that it's just, like I keep saying, crammed down your throat, it's just too much. We already have almost every media outlet right now doing that. I don't want my comics to do it as well. Yeah,
and it's just, we're not going to get into a political discussion by any means, but the election cycle is just, it starts so early. By this point, it's like, I think even the biggest politics nerds are kind of have a bit of fatigue.
For sure.
And I actually went and voted early a couple of weeks ago, so I've just I'm done with it, so I don't really pay a whole lot of attention. I got it out of the way. I mean, I was going to vote for whoever I was going to vote for no matter what, and I'll keep that off the podcast. But I voted early, so I'm done with it. I'm not going to have to mess with it at all.
Yeah, I envy you. I was going to try to do that this week, and I never did. So unless I can try to get in somewhere Monday, I'm going to be stuck in the crazy on Tuesday.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. What did you read this week?
I read something that I wanted to read before we went and saw Doctor Strange last night, but I just didn't get a chance. I read Doctor Strange The Oath, which is a 5-part story arc. I don't know if it was a mini-series per se. It came out in 2007. It was written by Brian K. Vaughan. And normally when we do our comics segment, we stick with something that was released last week or a couple of weeks ago or whatever. But I thought this was timely, like I said, because we're going to review Doctor Strange on this episode as our main topic. And this miniseries or story arc or whatever you want to call it is kind of the main source material for that movie. And so I thought it would be kind of fun to read it and then kind of see where it differs from the movie. I actually thought, because I know a little bit about the character. I've read the new run that's been going on for, I don't know if it's even been 2 years yet, but it's been going on for a little bit now, and that was kind of my first introduction to the character. Now, he does play some role in a few events here and there, so, I knew who the character was, but I think for readers or just fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that don't necessarily know a ton about the character, it's definitely a great introduction. It kind of checks every box in this 5-part miniseries or story arc or whatever that you kind of need to know about the character. Like, it kind of gives a really quick origin story about his hands and how he became, like, from this world-renowned surgeon to just kind of losing that. And so I appreciate that. And then it just kind of goes through a lot of what the movie goes through. And I liked the fact that it differs a lot. The movie definitely is a good source material, but the movie differs a lot from the comic book. Like, Wong doesn't play as big of a role in the movie as he does in this particular story. Like, he's kind of the driving force behind the story. The night nurse plays a huge role in the comic book, which is another character that kind of pops up here and there, but it's not necessarily a character that I know a ton about. And she plays a huge role in the book, so I like that a lot. Basically, the surgery scene in the film is almost completely ripped from this comic book, except for Rachel McAdams' character is the night nurse in the comic book. So I appreciated that. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, he's character that is different from a lot of the superheroes that we're used to seeing in the Marvel universe. And like I said, I really would recommend this story for anybody that maybe hasn't seen the movie yet and is planning on seeing the movie, but doesn't know a ton about the character, because I think it's a great introduction to him.
What an easy thing they could have done to connect the cinematic universe to the Netflix universe by just having Rosario Dawson and Doctor Strange as the night nurse.
Yeah, that would have been kind of cool.
I know that it would have maybe taken attention away from this movie, that they didn't want it taken away, but I don't know. That would have been pretty cool instead of having Rachel McAdams play that part and play a different role. But,
yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah, I don't really like the villain. We'll get into the film a lot more here in a little bit, but I didn't really like the villain either.
Is it? I'm assuming it's the same villain in the comic?
No, it's not. Okay. Basically, from what I understand, the villain in the comic book is actually his, like, rival doctor in the beginning of the movie, and they just don't develop that character to the extent that the comic book does.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
It's kind of a completely different character in the movie versus the comic book, but it's both versions have very weak villains. I'll just say it. So I'm kind of spoiling my review a little bit, but at this point we're kind of used to weak Marvel villains in the cinematic universe.
Yep, that seems to be a consistent, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right, so you ready for nerd news?
Absolutely.
So every week we go over the big nerd headlines that have come up since the last time we spoke. This week is no different. I got a few here, Pat, and a couple of them might be pretty short because they're trailers, and I know you don't watch trailers. So we'll just jump right in. First one is very relatable to the outfit you're wearing. It concerns Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, for those of you, obviously.
I'm in my pajamas, by the way.
Which consists of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shirt and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle sleep pants. So that's what I got I'm looking at right now. But anyways, I guess one of the producers on the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie said that a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 is not likely after the poor box office results from Out of the Shadows.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bummer. Tyler and I both have talked about both of the films. We reviewed both of them. and I think we liked him. I don't think, I know that we liked it much more than a majority of the critics, and it kind of bums me out. But I read that interview with him, and it kind of makes sense what he's saying. Like, with the second film, they didn't really do anything different. They just kind of threw in a bunch of people new. Then they thought that would bring people in because they have all the original villains, Bebop and Rocksteady, Crane, and they screwed Shredder up so bad in the original, the first one, that they tried to kind of backpedal in the second one, and they didn't really do a very good job, and they just kind of threw in these extra characters to kind of make up for it. And it was a fun movie, but it didn't bring in the people that they thought it was going to, and it did decent, but it didn't do as much as the first one did. And so with it already being kind of trending downward, they're not going to spend the money that they would need to make the third one, which makes sense because it's a big franchise. It will be rebooted, which is a shame because I hate that. I hate that so much. It sucks that Spider-Man, one of my other favorite characters, is getting rebooted. Like, it seems like every 4 or 5 years, and it sucks that eventually this is going to be rebooted again as well.
Yeah, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, like, in 5 years, we're going to get a different iteration of a live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, which is disappointing because they keep doing it until something hits, as opposed to putting more, more creative stuff in the things they're doing. So that's definitely disappointing. I wonder what toy sales had to do with it as well. I wonder if
those toys looked awful, man.
Yeah, I don't know if they just, like, I would imagine a movie like that really benefits from that. So I wonder if those toys just didn't sell like they were hoping. Yeah,
I know that you are behind on it, but you do read the new Turtles comic.
Define behind on it. Like, I don't really read it.
It's really good. I like it a lot. It's weird, but I'd like to see them maybe not necessarily go all in on the new book, because it is really, really weird, but kind of a more grounded approach to that story, I think, would work really, really well. I like that book a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very behind on the main run, but I've been reading the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle universe that I had brought up a month or two ago, and it is weird, but I could see them maybe going a route like that and it being more successful, possibly.
Yeah, I don't know if they will, because it's a little bit darker than I think we're used to. I mean, they're always going to make these movies to kids to sell toys and stuff like that. So I doubt that they would go a darker route with it, but I think that's kind of what this franchise needs.
For sure. So this next story also pertains to mostly you on this one, because it's George Romero, and that's a man that you have tattooed on your body. So I threw this in here for you. He was interviewed and basically blamed the decline of the zombie genre on The Walking Dead and Brad Pitt. So I guess he has had trouble in the last few years getting his movies financed, is what it sounded like, and he blames that on those two things. So like World War Z and The Walking Dead. And I think that what he's saying is that his movies were they had more of a political message or more socio-economical message. And this new show and these new types of zombie movies are more just about killing zombies and the post-apocalyptic stuff. So that's what he was kind of getting at. And I was curious what your take on it is, because I know obviously you love George Romero, but you're also, I mean, I wouldn't say you love The Walking Dead anymore, but like you're a fan of The Walking Dead, and I believe you were a fan of World War Z to a certain extent.
Yeah, to a certain extent, yeah.
So I'm just kind of curious what your opinion is.
Well, he can't blame me for not getting financed for the movie. I did throw a few bucks for his new movie on Kickstarter, so that happened. It's the only thing I've ever financed. I say financed. I think I gave like $5. Like it doesn't really matter. But as much as I love him, I mean, he is right to a certain extent. That's one of the reasons I love his movies so much, is because they do have a message, and it's not just killing zombies. But he just sounded like a bitter old man.
Yeah, for
sure. And that kind of bothered me. Like, I would want a person like that started this genre to be happy that his baby's finally grown up.
Yeah.
But I just think that he's a little bit bitter that he's maybe not, I don't know if he's not as well known as he thinks he should be because the genre is so popular now or what. But it kind of came off as sour grapes for me.
Yeah, that's the vibe I kind of got as well. I can definitely see his point, but
for sure.
But I mean, come on, like his last 3 movies were not fantastic, right?
No, Survival of the Dead was garbage.
Survival of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, and Land of the Dead, I believe.
Yes, I didn't mind Land of the Dead or Diary of the Dead, but Survival of the Dead was fucking awful.
I think that maybe he should look at his work and think about what he can do differently for the zombie genre now.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that looks like. How old is he?
He's got to be close to 70 years old at this point.
Yeah, I don't know what that looks like. I'm sure that we will see more George Romero movies before it's all said and done. But I mean, yeah, like you said, I would, if I were him. Maybe it's because he's not seeing the financial gain of those things.
Yeah,
but like his baby did grow up, and it's become like this cultural phenomenon, which is kind of cool. So
for sure.
All right. You shared this, I believe, on the Facebook, but I'll just throw it out here really quick. Not too much to say about it. Dark Tower got delayed from, I believe, February to summer 2017. So not a big delay, but they did move it to obviously the summer tentpole season. So maybe they have pretty high hopes for it. We're hoping. So we do have to wait a few more months to see Dark Tower, which I believe your comment on that was it gives you more time to read Gunslinger, and I feel the same way. I'm going to try to read it before that movie comes out. So
I don't see myself getting through all of them before that movie comes out. I'd like to get through a couple of them so I kind of have most of the story down, because this movie is not going to go through the whole 8 or 7 or 8 books or whatever, however many there are anyway. So as long as I can get through a couple of them, I buy myself a little bit more time before like whatever the TV show or the other movies come out.
Yeah, for sure. This next one's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy about it. The Simpsons has been renewed for another 2 years.
Yep.
So seasons 29 and 30. I say that, but I don't actively watch The Simpsons. But it was just so.
I've heard it's not good.
I mean, it was just such a huge part of me growing up. Like, I didn't have cable, or my family didn't have cable till I was a teenager. So I watched a lot of basic TV, and also like Sunday nights watching The Simpsons was definitely a staple in my upbringing. As far as pop culture goes. And I love that this show exists. I love that it continues to exist. I want it to be the longest running show of all time. And I really root for this show, just not with my wallet, I guess you would say, unfortunately. So, I'm definitely happy that it's going to be around a few more years. Maybe one day when it's all said and done, they'll release like a gigantic box set of the Simpsons Complete Collection. And I would definitely, be in for that. But I'm just so many years behind on that show. And I know it's not something where you have to watch one season before the other. I mean, it's kind of standalone episodes, but I would like to eventually get caught up on it.
For sure. I'll watch the marathon here and there when it happens after Thanksgiving. And I think that you're a bigger fan than I am of the franchise. I didn't really watch it a ton as a kid. I really, really like the movie. The movie is fucking fantastic, but I would be pretty excited if they decide to make another movie, but it's one of those big dreams that I have to kind of watch all of the Simpsons episodes, but it's never going to happen.
Dream big.
Well, I meant as in like time consuming big, not like, oh, that's like my ultimate dream is to sit here and watch 30 seasons of television. No, it's just like that would be such a huge time suck, and I can't even imagine how many hours I'd have to put into it. Well, I guess I can't imagine because I'm sure I could look it up somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I'd like to eventually watch all of it, but I highly doubt that ever happened.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's been around as long as I have. Like, I don't know a world without The Simpsons, and that's like one of the few things that has lasted as long as I've been around. So maybe it's like the kind of sentiment that goes along with that. Like, I don't want it to ever be over. So
for sure,
we'll see how long it goes. Last two are trailers. So if Pat hasn't seen them, I'll comment briefly, but if Pat has seen them, maybe we'll have more of a conversation. I'm going to doubt he's seen them. So the first is the Wonder Woman trailer that was released this week. Kind of figured on that one. Not really too much more than that first trailer we got.
Yeah.
We see more action, which was good. Like, the action looks fantastic in this movie. That was one of the highlights for me for Dawn of Justice, was the Wonder Woman fighting with Doomsday. I think that there was some really clever stuff there, and I think that her movie has potential, so we will see there. The next one was the Lego Batman trailer. There's a new Lego Batman trailer. Well, fantastic. I'll be honest. So I've been really super hyped for this movie. Like, the teasers that they released earlier this year were really hilarious. This is like the first full-fledged trailer, like showing what the story is going to be about and that kind of stuff. And I don't want to say I was disappointed, but it definitely doesn't have that tongue-in-cheek. I mean, there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, but it's not like the same vibe as those earlier trailers where you know, it's mostly just Batman and Alfred at the manor kind of going through stuff. Like, it introduces Zach Galifianakis' Joker and Michael Cera's Robin, which comes across as really strange. And I don't know, like, I'm still excited for the movie. I'm definitely going to see it in February. I'm sure we'll review it on the podcast, but it definitely hindered my expectations just a little bit.
Okay.
So that being said, that is all I have for nerd news.
All right, so our next segment is just kind of labeled as our main topic because it changed from episode to episode. Like I talked about earlier, we're going to review the Doctor Strange movie, the new Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. We went and saw this last night. I was surprised at how packed it was. Like,
yeah, man.
I don't remember the last time I had to wait in line to see a movie. Yeah. Probably Dark Knight Returns. I mean, we went and saw Star Wars. I mean, on Force Awakens. I couldn't think of the name of the movie. And I mean, we got there 45 minutes early and we didn't have to wait in the line. So I was definitely surprised by that. This movie was directed by Scott Derrickson, who is famous for his Sinister movie, written by him and his writing partner, C. Robert Cargill. It stars Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, who is a world-renowned surgeon who loses his ability to perform surgeries after a horrific car crash and must turn to an unlikely source to find another way to help people. So we start off each review by kind of giving our general overview of what we felt about the movie. We call it broad strokes. So how'd you feel about Doctor Strange?
Before I get into how I feel about it, did you see how the critics are feeling about it on Rotten Tomatoes?
Yeah. I mean, I've already lost, let's be honest.
But now it's just...
That was my last ray of hope. Not that I was necessarily rooting against this movie. I just, judging by the trailers, and I'm going to get into that, I didn't think that it was going to be that good. Like, I didn't think people were going to like this as much as they did or seemed to be.
Liking it, yeah. Yeah, so if you don't listen regularly, we're in a Rotten Tomatoes film draft where we drafted movies at the beginning of the year.
It's over.
And the loser's gonna have to do something we haven't decided yet, but I'm basically killing Pat now, and that was You're
murdering me in a game that I invented.
I know. And so now the fun of it is, because I started so bad, like, now the fun of it's just talking smack. So just another nail in the coffin with this one.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I'm definitely not gonna root against Rogue One. So.
Yeah. So all of that being said, the critics love it. I would not say I loved it. I mean, it was not a bad movie, but when in the long run, as far as all these Marvel Cinematic movies go, this is in the lower echelon for me. I'm not a fan of magic. So whether it's this, Harry Potter, like wizards, anything like that, sorcerers, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of magic, and I'm not a fan of the interdimensional stuff that this movie presented and this movie introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, I like the idea of Doctor Strange being a character that's present and being a supporting piece in the Marvel Universe, like he often is in the comics, like just popping up when people need problems, kind of like what we saw in one of the mid-credit scenes.
Yeah. But
I don't particularly care about his own adventures. And that's my opinion. That's my bias. I know that that's not fair as somebody who's supposed to be an unbiased reviewer reviewing a movie, but it just didn't interest me. This movie is by no means bad. I felt pretty bland about it. Like, I was never excited for it going into it. I was always going to see it, of course, but I was almost kind of bored with it last night. And it's not a bad movie. Like, spoiler alert, I'll end up giving it a rating that recommends it. It's just, if we were to go through and rank all the Marvel movies, it's going to be lower tier for me.
Yeah, I was actually pretty excited when they first announced that they were going to make this movie, because we have gotten however many Marvel Cinematic Universe movies at this point. And I mean, I love them, of course, but I was kind of looking for something a little bit different than what we're used to. And this character is a lot different than what the audience is used to as far as this Marvel Cinematic Universe is concerned. Unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, the trailer didn't really do it for me. I mean, until you see the movie, obviously the trailer is all you have to judge the movie on, but it just kind of felt like Thor meets Inception, which I'm not a huge fan of the Thor movies. And so I was a little bit nervous about that. I actually said to my wife while we were sitting there, I was like, there's a ton of people in here, and I think a lot of them are going to leave this movie disappointed because it's not what they expected. Like, I think they expect another Captain America movie or something like that, and it's going to be weird, and I don't think people are going to like it as much as they've liked the other Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. But I actually think that it did a really good job of kind of interjecting humor during some of the more boring parts, because good chunk of this movie is basically just a really generic origin story. And so I thought that they did a really good job of kind of putting in jokes, kind of sprinkling them in to kind of keep people's attention. Because I was towards the first, maybe the first act of this movie, I was kind of in and out whether or not I was really digging it. And some of the jokes are pretty cheesy, but you kind of are used to that sometimes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I thought that they did just enough to kind of pique my interest, and I think they kept some of the more, I don't know, generic fans, I guess. That's probably not a very good word for it, but just the regular people excited and kind of into the story.
Yeah, I'll agree. I will say, you were nervous about how it was going to do. Like, people clapped at the end of this movie, and I don't know, like, where, whenever I was in like middle school, so I was not made fun of, but teased about my love for superheroes, and the row behind us was all like middle-aged.
Oh my God, they need to shut the fuck up.
Middle school-aged girls that like were so into this movie and
I think
squealed.
it has a lot to do with him, though, too.
And it very well could. I mean, obviously he's been in a lot of stuff and he has his own following, but they squealed whenever a certain character showed up in the mid-credit scene. And like, it's just, I know we talk about it all the time, but I'm constantly amazed at how much like pop culture has changed.
Yeah, for sure. And one last thing before we get into the story. Like I said, that this movie is kind of a generic origin story, but I think once it found its stride, it's the closest I think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has come to taking a comic book and putting it on the screen. Now, Thor is a little weird, but there is what I call like comic book science. And like comic books can do, I think, more than movies can do. That it can be a little bit weirder because it's kind of a niche audience that they're the movies have to be a little bit more grounded because it's going to a bigger audience. This movie is the closest that I've seen so far of a comic book come to life. Like, it's super, super weird. And I did enjoy that aspect of it.
Cool. So, story?
How'd you feel about the story?
So you touched on like the typical origin story stuff. I definitely think that as well. So it is the typical Marvel origin story of a character, and they dressed it up with the magic and the interdimensional stuff, but at its core, it's Iron Man, in a way. And I'm not trying to simplify it that much, but it is the story that we've continuously seen every time they have to introduce a new character with their own solo movie. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it works. Like, that's been their formula for the last 8 years, and we've gotten a lot of cool characters out of it, but at its core, that's what this movie is. And personally, I hate to say I'm getting tired of it, because I'm one of the firm believers that the comic book genre isn't going to die out. Like, it's going to keep going, but I wanted something different, and this movie didn't deliver it for me. So, I don't know. I think this will be the same thing we see with Captain Marvel in a couple of years whenever they introduce that character. So there's not really much with the story that I can pinpoint really disliking. It's just, I was bored. I'm curious to see what you think because, I mean, the pacing was good. The character interaction was good. Like the building of Doctor Strange was good. It was all at its core just generic, and I felt bored with it. So I'm curious to hear what you think of the story.
I really appreciated his arc. I liked how it seemed very logical. He's basically using the Ancient One because he wants to fix his hands. Like that's his sole purpose, and he's just kind of going along with this other stuff to get that end goal. And so I like the fact that when the shit starts hitting the fan, he doesn't immediately jump into it. He doesn't immediately jump into the fray. So I appreciated that. I really liked his arc. I thought it was a logical step. But like I said, it's just kind of a generic origin story that they kind of interject humor to keep people intrigued. But it's basically just like a training montage, a good chunk of the movie, and that kind of bothered me a little bit. And there's a couple of plot holes that I noticed when I was thinking about it last night after I got home. Mostly with the Ancient One.
Yeah. Especially
at the beginning. Why doesn't she continue to chase him? That's something that bothered me. Like, why does she just give up? And if she could see into the future, why would she ever train him to begin with? The villain at the beginning. Like, she, according to her own words, she could see into the future to the moment of her death. So she would have seen all of these things happen. Why would she ever train him to begin with? Yeah. Unless she thought that she could obviously change it somehow. But if she could see into the moment of her death, obviously it was always going to end this way.
Yeah.
So why would she ever train him to begin with? So that bothered me. But the villain is so mediocre that it didn't really bother me that much.
Very mediocre villain for sure.
Yeah, and that's just kind of something that we've come to expect from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Unfortunately, we're always building to these big Avenger movies. And the solo superhero movies generally don't have very good villains. And so that bugs me because we're just building to Thanos, and that just, I don't know. I don't like movies that are just building blocks.
Well, you think about it, even building to Thanos, unless we see him again pop up somewhere before the Infinity Gauntlet movies, or Infinity War movies rather, like he's not been built up that much either.
Yeah.
So are they going to do a lot of building him up in that first part of that, or what? So I do think that they have room to do more with Thanos, which is supposed to be like the biggest of the big bads as well. So
yeah,
it's a constant problem.
So what did you think of, and I know I've read on Reddit and stuff like that people are pretty upset about this. What do you think of the Eye of Augmento being an Infinity Stone? Because that's not what it is in the comic books. I guess I should rephrase that. It has the Time Stone in it. Yeah. It's not actually an Infinity Stone.
I like it. I mean, you gotta,
change it up a little bit.
It fits for what they're building to. I don't think, so spoiler, a little bit of a spoiler, not too much. It is explicitly said,
yes,
like, hey, this is an Infinity Stone in case you guys didn't catch on.
Yeah.
And I don't think they necessarily needed to do that because as they've introduced all of these Infinity Stones throughout the first two phases, they don't come out and necessarily say it. They kind of teased it in which movie did they tease it in? Was it Age of Ultron?
Yes.
They've come out and said it then, but as they introduce like these threats that have to do with the Infinity Stone, they don't explicitly say it. So I don't know that they needed to explicitly tell us. I think that from the get-go, I kind of assumed it was.
Yeah.
But, I don't have a problem with it personally.
Yeah. I think we're going to be on the same page with that. It's not everything has to be like panel for panel the same thing. Like that's what makes these movies great is they take the source material and they kind of change it and kind of warp it a little bit to fit what they needed to fit. So
yeah.
It didn't surprise me at all that they just came out and said that it was, because that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, not that Doctor Strange wouldn't be invested in a game if when Thanos comes raining down with the Infinity Gauntlet, but now he's going to have that stone with him, which kind of ropes Doctor Strange into that, and then it ropes the Guardians of the Galaxy into that, and it continues to rope these different characters that have had experience with these Infinity Stones together. So they're kind of building it that way, which I appreciate.
Yeah, so the next little segment that we do in each review is we talk about the performances. I don't have a ton to say about the performances. I will say that Tilda Swinton's bald cap really, really bugged me. Like, I could not stand her looking at her. And not just that, because obviously that doesn't have a ton to do with the performances, but she just seemed like she was sleepwalking. Like,
yeah,
nothing about her performance really captured me at all.
She didn't do much. For somebody who's so colorful and out there with the character she portrays, she didn't really bring her A game.
I know the character itself is supposed to be pretty stoic, and I think that's what she was going for, but it just seemed like she was bored, and because it seemed that she was bored, I was kind of bored.
So then why get such a colorful performer to play just a stoic character? I
don't understand why they got her to play that particular character to begin with, and I know a lot of people are upset about that.
I don't know that I necessarily am upset about it. I mean, you know, if you didn't make that, maybe if you made that character an Asian female, it would be different. But if you didn't have her in that role, then the issue might have been there's only one female character in this entire movie, and it's Rachel McAdams, who's just a very small supporting player. So I could see them maybe wanted to add a little bit of diversity with that, but they ended up just kind of getting a lot of backlash for it anyways. So
yeah, it was a weird choice, and I don't think that she did a very good job. Everybody else I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, everybody else was serviceable. I will say, like, Benedict Cumberbatch is Doctor Strange. Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
He's the perfect Doctor Strange. I'm so glad they got him for it. And I also wanted to say, poor Mads Mikkelsen. Like, we've said it before, but his Predator face is just, he's getting typecast like crazy. So maybe we'll see something different from him in Rogue One, because I think that he's Jyn Erso's dad, and it seems like in that trailer we saw he kind of gets roped into helping build the Death Star. And I'll get back to Doctor Strange in a second. But so maybe there's some better character development for him there. But in this movie, he is just, like you mentioned, a throwaway villain.
I did like his performance, though. I mean, he wasn't
bad, but it's just like, man, that guy can not get away from the way his face looks.
Yeah, he's got a weird, like,
he's got a villainous face.
Yeah, but I mean, he did what he could do with the material that he was given. But like we mentioned before, just that formula of just having like these really bland villains just continue with this movie.
To show you how bored I was with this movie, anytime he was on screen and talking to Doctor Strange and there were close-ups on his face, like I would study his eye makeup. And I was like, is that makeup or is that CGI?
It's got to be CGI, right?
Like, but the purple of it. And I'm like, I wonder if that's makeup. Like, that's where
they might have done a little bit of makeup around the eye and then kind of done the green screen.
That's where my mind was, man, look at that eye makeup.
Doesn't have anything to do with well, I guess it does, sort of. I thought it was weird. Like, he had the purple shit around his eyes, and then at one point he's still crying, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that purple shit would mess with your tear duct. That's how, like, at certain points in this movie, I was kind of out of it a little bit. I was thinking about his fucking tear duct.
Well, I remember that scene as well, and I was like, I wonder if they told him to, like, cry, or, like, they made him cry with, like, something they put in his eye, or if just the fucking makeup around his eye and him having to hold his eyes open just causing his eyes to water, and they just went with it.
Yeah, I don't know. It was good performance, but he wasn't really given a ton to work with because never mind. I won't get into that. But
for sure. So you ready for some action?
Yeah. I kept thinking the entire time we were watching this movie, I would absolutely love to see what they actually filmed. Like, before they put any of the CGI, because I bet it's funny as fuck. Like, them just waving their arms, they probably felt really silly.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, you get this with all of the movies. I've seen, like Thor, like, falling down and he just kind of, like, jumps off this little box. I've seen that gif a lot. So, I mean, you get that with all these superhero movies. Yeah. But, I mean, God, 90% of the action in this movie was CGI, and that was definitely disappointing. Like, they started off with a big action piece that was pretty much all CGI. And by the end of the movie, it was just kind of, I was very fatigued by all of it. And just, it's kind of sad that we've gotten to the point where these really cool visual, like CGI works is just, I'm just kind of used to it by now.
Yeah, I mean, the action was definitely trippy. Some of it was really fun. Some of it was super annoying. You mentioned Inception earlier, and I thought that was funny because that's exactly what I had in my notes as well. Like,
it was like they saw that scene and they were like, let's do that for a whole movie.
Like, imagine Inception, but like that staircase or the hallway scene, and do it just like the entire time.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was very obvious to me. I would say my favorite fight scene was definitely the more grounded of all of them, where it was,
he gets the cape.
Yeah, the scene where he gets the cape, and
that was fantastic.
Like the doorways to like the desert and other places, I kind of liked how that was involved as well. So that was a great fight scene, but the rest were just pretty meh. I guess.
For sure.
Cool.
I mean, that's pretty much all I have for Doctor Strange. The last thing that we always do is, of course, give it a star rating, which if you're curious, we do have a tab on our website, thenerdspodcast.com, where you can check out all of our star ratings. So normally what we do is if we give something a 3 out of 5, that means that we recommend it. So what is your star rating for Doctor Strange?
3.5.
Okay. I agree with that as well. So we're going to...
I'm surprised. I thought that you were going to like it a lot more. I didn't think we'd be on the same page on this one, but we just can't fucking escape our opinions usually matching up.
Yeah, I just think the bland villain and some of the generic origin story aspects of this movie, the humor was a little cheesy at parts, but like you said, I did enjoy the cape scene. I did enjoy some of the performances, and I like the character. I like the fact that it's a little bit weirder and it's not something that we're used to seeing in the universe. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen with the characters.
For sure. I will patiently wait until Doctor Strange and Tony Stark meet each other, and Tony Stark gets to say, that they're sweet facial hair bros.
Yeah, like they're gonna have a goatee off.
I don't know. I can't wait for that. I mean, they got to do it. It's like one of the funniest things in the comics. So, hopefully, we'll see that as the cinematic universe progresses on.
For sure.
All right, you ready for Nerd Favorite?
Yep. What is it this week?
So, yeah, we cap each episode off just asking each other a nerdy question, and usually it's your favorite blank. It's my week this week. I've been watching I've been watching Comic Book Man. It just came back on the air.
Sure.
It's a show I really love, even though there's definitely some staged aspects to it, like most shows. Like, it's basically a nerdy version of Pawn Stars. It's definitely fun, and it feels organic, and obviously we love those guys from this Kevin Smith universe. So, that being said, a lot of times on that show, somebody will bring in something very nostalgic to one of the guys, and they'll end up wanting to buy it with their own money to put in their own collection because it was a toy that they had growing up. And the first episode this year, there was a toy Walt bought that he had a lot of nostalgia for. So that got me thinking, like, what is a toy that you had growing up that you would rebuy again now just to have it, just because of the nostalgia with it, or just to display it, or whatever that looks like. I've been thinking about what my answer is going to be because there's so many of them. And luckily, most of my old toys are in my parents' basement somewhere. So, like, if I really wanted it, I could go after it. Like, if I didn't have it anymore, I'd probably say the Millennium Falcon I had, because it is, like, just an awesome toy. But that is in my parents' basement somewhere, so I can eventually get that if need be. The toy that I don't have anymore that I really wish that I did would definitely be my green lightsaber from Return of the Jedi. I just broke the shit out of that whenever I had it, with just having lightsaber fights and recreating scenes from that movie. I broke the blade to pieces because just wailing on other lightsabers. And that's disappointing because, I could go buy one now at like Target, but the blades seem cheaper and smaller than they used to be. And there was just something really great about that lightsaber. And, I would definitely just have it now just to sit on my shelf or put on my wall or something, because there were a lot of great memories with that and recreating those scenes from Star Wars, which had a big impact on me growing up, obviously. So I think that's the route I'm going to go for this one. Yeah.
For longtime listeners, you probably just assume that I'm going to pick the party van, TMNT. I mean, that's a good answer, because I did enjoy playing with that as a kid, but I'm going to pick something a little bit more odd, I guess.
Okay.
There was a Christmas that I got, and I had to I looked up what it was called while you were talking. It was a Fisher-Price Great Adventures Castle. It was
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it had a drawbridge. It was just like this big castle, and you kind of got these little knight figures. I played the shit out of that. I loved that growing up. I played that so much. I remember that Christmas where I just basically ignored my entire family and just played with that the entire time. Like, I loved that. And I actually looked it up on eBay. And for a toy, it's actually pretty expensive. It's $300.
Holy fuck.
Yeah. So if I still had it, that would just be an added bonus. But, yeah, I love that toy so much. I love the idea just having a little moat that I could bring up. Well, I guess you don't. It's the drawbridge that you bring up and down the moat. You don't.
Yeah, I never had that, but one of my best friends growing up had it. And anytime we went over to his house for a sleepover, we'd play with that. And, we'd also incorporate our other action figures into it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I miss being that creative and fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun because, I mean, it's a pretty generic, just a piece of plastic shaped like a castle. But yeah, you had to get really creative nowadays. It's like, I have an actual BB-8 droid that works. And so I don't think that kids, I'm going to sound like an old man, like get off my porch, but I don't think that kids have as much of that anymore because you have all these crazy cool toys, which is awesome, but I just remember playing with that a lot.
Yeah, for sure, dude. That was a great one. I forgot all about that thing. Man, memories. All right,
yeah,
cool.
For sure. All right. So that's episode 117 of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast. As always, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. It's both at the Nerds Podcast. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Google+. Vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. We'd really appreciate it if you comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Nerds You're Looking For. You can also check out our Twitch channel, which Tyler does a weekly stream every Monday at 9 p.m. Central. We'd also appreciate if you subscribe, rate, review us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any good podcatcher you use. You can also email us at thenerdsyou'relooking@gmail.com. You can check out my stand-up. I'm doing a few shows here coming up. I'm going to be doing Bears Place Comedy Competition on November 14th in Bloomington, Indiana. I'm also going to be doing Comedy Night at someplace else on December 1st. I'm also hosting the Pop-Up Comedy Presents Chris Shaw at Legend Sports Bar and Grill in French Lick, Indiana on December 2nd. So definitely you can check out all of those shows. I'd really appreciate it. For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt,
we are the Nerds You're Looking For. Take it easy, guys.
Later, guys.